Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show. So you filed a tax extension, and now you're sitting back with your feet up and saying, you know what? I don't have to worry about this again until October. Well, that's not a great plan, my friends. The nice thing about a tax extension is that there's no requirement to justify your need for more time. It's simple. You fill out a form, and you automatically be granted an additional 6 months to file your return. So what do a lot of people do? They sit back, they say, you know what, I'll put that aside, get through the summer months. School goes back in September, then it gets busy, then we get to the end of September, and then all of a sudden you go, oh my, I got 15 days to get this tax return done. Well, that being said, it's not a great idea to just continually to put these things off. And I want to talk to you about some of the reasons that it's not a great idea to do that. Now, I'm not saying don't file an extension. Filing of an extension will definitely save you penalties for not filing on time. But let's talk about some other things that you need to take into consideration. Number one, you're going to delay your refund. Well, that's obvious. If your tax return was due April 17th, and you filed a 6-month extension, let's say you're due a refund when you finally get around to doing your tax return. Well, you could have gotten that refund back in March or February even if you filed right at the end of January. But now you've put it off, and let's say you're at October 17th or October 15th and you're ready to file and you're due a refund. Well, guess what? Now you've foregone the ability to use that money from the start of the tax season filing until the end of the extended tax season filing. And one of the things that's interesting, I did some research, and only 39% of U.S. adults have the capacity to cover a $1,000 emergency. That is scary, my friends. And what's even more interesting is that the average tax refund last year was more than twice that amount. So the average tax return, $2,000. So people are scared or don't have that, that emergency fund, but they might if they just filed their tax return timely. And that's why it's very important to not just put this off. Another thing that they don't talk a lot about is that if you fail to file your return for 3 years, so if you continue to let this go and you wait 3 years, the IRS will actually not send you a refund. So what am I saying here? So this is the 2017 tax time. So the tax return is due April 15th of 2018. Well, if you don't do anything, 19, 20, 21, the day after the filing season ends in 2021, if you were due a refund for 2017, you'll not be able to collect that money. And there's nothing you can do about that. They just will tell you absolutely not, you don't get it. Now, the second reason to go ahead and get your return filing is that you actually accrue interest charges if you owe money. And I've talked about this some when we talked about filing for an extension, and a lot of people don't understand this. Yes, you can file for an extension to extend the time to file your return, and it saves you that penalty of filing late, but you cannot extend the amount of time to pay the return. So in other words, if you don't file your return, you file an extension April 17th, and let's say you don't procrastinate and you get your tax return done, May 1st, May 2nd, and you owe money. Well, guess what? The IRS is going to charge you interest, and that interest is not a small amount. The penalty for paying your tax bill late is 0.5% of your unpaid debt for each month or partial month you failed to hand over the cash, up to a total of 25%. So even though you may have filed an extension and now you owe, you could potentially be looking at increasing the amount you owe by 25%. That's a big hit to take. What's the benefit of that? Just adding to your, it's bad enough that you owe taxes to begin with. And now you're making it worse, or as like a friend of mine says, you're exacerbating the problem. So here's the deal. You can't exactly pay your tax bill if you haven't run the numbers to see what you're looking at. So that's why it's crucial to tackle the tax return sooner rather than later, even if you technically have until October to get it done. And that's a big deal. I don't see a lot of reasons to file an extension. If you have a medical issue, if you're out of the country, if you're in the military, if you are involved in some investment that they're late in getting you your information, then maybe it makes sense. But when you look at the cost associated with this, just the interest and the penalties alone for not paying on time should really act as a big red flag or flashing, red light that says, hey, don't go there. Another thing you want to consider is this becomes a trap. And what do I mean by that? And we talked about this a few minutes ago. April 1st comes around and you pull out that folder that you keep on the desk with your tax documents, and you take a look at it on the Saturday morning and you go, oh, I just don't want to do this today. I'll do it tomorrow. So then you get up Sunday morning and you pull out that tax folder and you look at it again and, I don't want to do this week. I'll look at this one night this week. And of course the whole week goes by. And then you come back to another weekend. Well, you get the idea. And then April 15th rolls around and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to file an extension. You file an extension. And then you say, you know what? Last year, I didn't even get to my tax return until the 1st of October. Well, this year I'm going to do differently. So you put a mark on your calendar. You say, you know what? The weekend after April 17th, I'm going to get to that tax return. Well, guess what, folks? It doesn't happen. And this becomes this trap of even getting close to till October, you're still not done your tax return. But if you didn't make the deadline this year due to sheer procrastination, then the chances are you're going to run into the same problem come October. That's why you're better off scheduling some time to complete your taxes and getting it over with. The sooner you do it, the less you'll have to worry about that nagging yet critical task hanging over your head. And remember, though filing a tax extension may have spared you some grief in the past April, it's not an excuse to ignore your return for the next 5 months and change. You're better off submitting that return as soon as you can and buying yourself some peace of mind in the process. And trust me, I have experience in this regard with clients. I have clients that will just blow past, the April 15th deadline. They file the extension, then they blow past the October filing deadline. And next thing you know, it's January the following year. And they never did the previous year tax return. And now they're getting close to April again, and they haven't filed that tax return for the previous year. And now they owe the tax return for the current year. And maybe they don't even bother filing an extension this time. And this is where it becomes a trap. I've got somebody scheduled to come in the next couple of weeks that they haven't filed their tax returns for 7 years. And you think, oh my God, how do they do that? Well, that's very common. Once you start into that trap of, I'm going to procrastinate this, I'm going to put it off, it becomes a disaster. And I've seen people go and take their tax obligation and multiply that over and over and over with these penalties and with the interest for not paying on time, for not filing on time. And it really comes down to taking a little personal, responsibility and getting it done on time. So I hope this was helpful, talking about now that you've got extended, let's still get it done.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware, and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.